This is Mike with AskTractorMike.com, and I'm speaking today with Tyler. And Tyler's dad, Jim, and I are old friends, and I've watched Tyler grow up. We used to live in the same neighborhood back when we lived in town, and I moved out to the country, and Jim and I have stayed friends, and Tyler's been all over the country. He's a engineering guy, got a degree in engineering. And anyways, moved back to this area, and a couple of Saturdays ago, was building some fence, and his dad mentioned to me that he was. I said, well, if he needs my tractor, come get it. So they came, got my tractor, and we ran into something that was partially created by me, but something that caused a failure on the tractor that I want to talk about. And first off, Tyler, you're fairly typical of a lot of my audience, people that are moving out and getting a little acreage, and you want to get more. Tell me your experience on tractors.
I've operated the tractor for maybe 10 hours, so not a lot, just barely anything really.
And we were out here on a Saturday afternoon, and we had the post hole digger. He's putting in a new fence. We had a post hole digger and a tractor, and I thought, well, what better time to train a guy that's probably going to be using a tractor for the better part of the rest of his life if he gets out in the country and even here on a small acreage. So I was training him, and we were using a post hole digger, and he's relocating a fence. You had the auger down in the ground, life was good, hole was getting dug, and then tell me what happened.
Well, I went to pull it out to shake the dirt off to see how we were doing, and it went too high and the PTO shaft popped apart.
And this was partially created by me. I did a sycamore video here a few weeks ago, and I changed the position of where my 3-point is, and I actually made it to where it raises up too high. But even when it's fixed right, you have a real problem. So I wanted to talk about two things today. First off, when you're running a 3-point implement, always check and make sure you don't go to the extreme height when you're using it. And what happened was the front half and the back half of the PTO shaft came apart.
Yeah, that was scary.
It made a lot of noise. It bent the PTO shaft. And luckily, his dad and I were watching. We weren't standing nearby. So I guess the first thing I need to tell you, if you got people watching you, keep them back a little bit in case something like this happens.
Yes, for sure.
And then everything came apart, and then we thought, well, we're going to go to the local local farm supply store and get a replacement. And your dad immediately volunteered to pay for it. And I don't think he realized when he volunteered to pay for it how much PTO shafts were. You kind of got a shock when we got to the farm supply store.
The length we needed was $400.
I could see the pain in your dad's eyes.
Yes, it was funny, actually.
We're going to talk a little bit about how I got by that $400 and what we actually had to do and put it back together. But the first thing I want to tell you, on most tractors, there is a stop that you can put in that will restrict either your movement up or your movement down on your 3-point. And when you're new to tractors, on brush hogs and on post hole diggers and on things on the 3-point with a PTO, find out how high that can go without causing damage, because on a lot of brush hogs, if you raise them up, at some point they'll be into the PTO shaft, and if they go above the PTO shaft, you bend the PTO shaft, and then you're spending $400 to get a new one, or going the way I'm going to tell you about here in a minute. On a post hole digger, the owner's manual tells you, and I went back and read it, do not engage the PTO with the post hole digger all the way up in the air. But they don't tell you, if you have the auger in the ground and you decide to lift it up, don't lift it up all the way. You just got to kind of figure that out. And I had never really thought about this being a problem, because I've just always instinctively not raised stuff up that high. I don't do it with my brush hog, and I don't do it with the post hole digger. But the bottom line, if you're new to running equipment, and I was training Tyler on how to use this, so this one's on me, and also had readjusted my 3-point. So I take full credit for this failure. Adjust that stop to where you don't come up to the very top of your 3-point travel when you lift your implement up. It's very important. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what the fix was on this. We did go to a couple of farm supply stores and looked at their options for a replacement PTO shaft. And that's what a lot of you would probably want to do, especially on a Saturday afternoon. Farm dealers were closed, and that's what we thought about doing, and they were tremendously expensive. So what I did on Monday was I called the local dealer that sells this brand of post hole diggers and asked him if he could fix it, and he recommended that I take it to a shop that actually specializes in repairing drive lines. And they were able to take the bent shafts, separate them from the yokes, and put new shafts in. And I wanted to keep the old yokes. And the reason it's important on this particular PTO shaft, you have a little plug that goes in that sits in a groove, and you need that plug in because if you break the shear pin on it, the PTO shaft will spin in that groove. It won't come completely off. If you buy an entirely new PTO shaft, when you break that shear bolt, it's going to come off the tractor, and we're going to have the same scary thing we had when Tyler had the two pieces of the PTO come apart, and we don't want that. So I wanted the same yokes to go back on the tractor. So that really boiled down to two options. I could order an entirely new PTO shaft from the dealer for this brand of post hole digger, or I could go to a local shop that specializes in driveline repair. And I highly urge you, when you have a tractor, to find one of these shops that just concentrates on PTO and driveline repair, because they're good folks to know, and they'll get you back and running at a good price. And I had them save the two pieces of the PTO, and this is what it looks like when your PTO separates when you're running. And this wasn't even under load, but you have one end that's got a really bad end on it, and the other part is actually bent. And I'm back and running, and it cost $130, which I thought was amazing. So we're back in the field. So 2 lessons today. Make sure when you have a 3-point implement with a PTO, make sure you check to see what happens if you go to the top end of its travel. And if that's a problem, that might break your PTO shaft or make it come apart, then put that stop in there to keep it from coming all the way up until you get used to use it, number one. And number two, find one of these little clutch, axle, transaxle shops locally, and if you do have a failure, don't go buy a new shaft. Have them cut the yokes off and put a new shaft in, and it'll save you a bunch of money. I survive on web traffic. I'd be honored if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel and like my Facebook page and share this video with other tractor enthusiasts. And if you have questions or comments, put them below. We'll try to answer them. Thanks for watching.